VHS tapes have always made me uneasy. There's something about the static, the flicker, the grainy sound. It feels like they're hiding something. Over the years, I've come across recordings that were never supposed to be found. Some were erased, others locked away by the FBI, but a few slipped through, and what's on them is beyond strange. Real footage, real cases, no explanations. Today we're diving into the most disturbing VHS tapes ever recorded, the ones that terrified even the investigators who found them. Let's press play. We start with a story from a VHS tape dated 1999. It opens on the set of Ozzy's Dungeon, a chaotic and colorful parody of a children's game show from that era. The set is cheap, the energy is high, and the host, Trevor, promises the young contestants the grandest prize imaginable if they can win. A single wish, with the guarantee that whatever they wish for will absolutely come true. The final challenge is a bizarre obstacle course, an absurdly grotesque tunnel described as simulating human digestion. Even for a 90s kids show, it feels far more like a piece of a strange ritual than a simple game. All over the set, strange symbols can be seen painted on the walls and props, along with the recurring image of a stylized open mouth, the same one used in the show's official logo. Remember these images. They are not just set dressing. They will become crucial to understanding the horrifying finale. The story focuses on a young contestant named Donna. She is determined and skilled, easily making her way through the messy physical challenges. She dominates the early rounds and makes it to the final, digestive tract-themed obstacle course. If she can make it through to the end and meet Ozzy, she will be granted one wish, with no restrictions or limitations. The camera cuts to her family in the audience, cheering her on with an almost desperate intensity. As the final challenge begins, Donna flies through the course, easily getting through the strange, fleshy-looking tunnels. She's just seconds away from victory, about to crawl out of the final section. But just before she can reach the goal, her opponent from the other team plays dirty. He shoves her hard, causing her to fall. We see a sickeningly unnatural angle as her leg breaks beneath her. The show's tape ends abruptly right there, cutting to static. The next footage we see is from a home video, recorded sometime later by Donna's mother. The bright, cheerful atmosphere of the game show is gone, replaced by the quiet, tense reality of their home. We see Donna, now confined to a wheelchair. The accident wasn't a simple injury. It left her permanently disabled. Her leg, which we get a brief glimpse of, looks withered and scarred. It's clear that the family's hope and happiness were shattered on the floor of that television studio. However, her family refuses to let things end there. They have kidnapped the show's host, Trevor, and are holding him captive in their garage. In a twisted act of vengeance, they have recreated the show's challenges in the most sadistic and humiliating ways imaginable. They force him to reenact the very games that led to Donna's injury, all while Donna herself watches silently from her wheelchair. Her mother threatens to disfigure him with a syringe full of what she claims is acid if he fails to comply. Under this extreme pressure, with his life on the line, the host finally breaks. He confesses that there is another way, a real way, for Donna to have her wish granted. He tells them that Ozzy is not just a character for a TV show, Ozzy is real. He leads the entire family back to the abandoned studio lot where Ozzy's Dungeon was once filmed. The place is derelict and decaying, but something is immediately off. Despite having been abandoned for years, the path to the studio is lit with burning torches, and the entrance is sealed by a massive, ancient-looking door that seems completely out of place. Inside, the old staff members are still there, dressed exactly as they were during the show's broadcast, seemingly unchanged by the passage of time. They move with a quiet, cult-like purpose, guiding the group not onto a soundstage, but deep underground into a dark, damp cavern. There, in the heart of the earth, they find the truth. A morbidly obese woman lies on a stone altar, being worshipped as a kind of deity by other figures in Ozzy's Dungeon t-shirts. She is the true vessel of Ozzy. The host instructs Donna to approach. As Donna gets closer, she leans in and whispers her wish to the woman. For a moment, there is silence. Then, the woman on the altar begins to groan, her body contorting violently. Her stomach splits open, and a strange, tentacled being pulls itself out. Where its face should be, there are only blinding, pulsating lights. The creature emits powerful beams of energy, and within those beams are the same incomprehensible symbols that were scattered all over the game show set. As this happens, the faces of everyone present, the entire family, and even the host, begin to distort and dissolve, their features sloughing off as if made of wax. Before the recording cuts out for the final time, the camera focuses on Donna. She is sitting in her wheelchair, watching her family be unmade, with a wicked and triumphant smile on her face. So, what exactly did we just witness? The show's name, Ozzy's Dungeon, was never just a catchy title. It was a literal reference to the entity itself. The creature, Ozzy, is the one who grants the wishes. The brief glimpses we see of former winners kneeling before the altar suggest they are not just contestants, but worshippers in Occult. The symbols scattered throughout the set, and the ones the creature manifests, suggest Ozzy is some kind of ancient entity, a demon or perhaps a cosmic god, capable of bending reality to grant the wishes of those who successfully navigate its ritual. The pregnant woman deep in the cavern acts as a living portal, a grotesque incubator for the creature. It is within her swollen womb that the entity chooses to manifest in our world. The entire game show was nothing more than a front for a cult, a filter designed to find worthy supplicants and feed this ancient being. The symbols across the set were the sigils Ozzy uses when granting wishes. The show's logo, the open mouth, depicts Ozzy's head, and the glowing lights on the creature's face are revealed to be its eyes. The strange, fleshy statue seen on the set was a reference to its body, and even the staff members are revealed to be dedicated worshippers, guiding Donna's family to the final summoning ritual and assisting in the creature's violent manifestation. And Donna's wish. The footage never tells us what she whispered, but her chilling smile as her family is destroyed gives us a terrifying clue. Her wish wasn't for her leg to be healed, or for riches, or for a normal life. It seems her wish was for revenge, for liberation. Not just from the host, but from the family who pushed her, and from the pain that had defined her existence. She didn't just win the game, she embraced the monster at the end of it. Ozzy's Dungeon blurs the line between sadistic entertainment and human suffering, but the next tape is far worse, because it isn't a reenactment, it's real, and the tragedy of Kara Knott still haunts California. We begin on the night of December 27th, 1986. This is the story of Kara Knott, a 20-year-old college student at San Diego State University who was full of life and ambition. Her childhood in El Cajon was happy, spent with a family that supported her dreams. Kara was studying television and journalism, a field that perfectly matched her curious and outgoing personality. She was a dedicated student, active in campus life, and spent her free time working at a local zoo and a health food store, always trying to make the world a little better. For her 20th birthday, her father had given her a pristine white 1968 Volkswagen Beetle, a car she cherished. That evening, Kara was driving her beloved Volkswagen home after visiting her boyfriend, who was sick. The 50-kilometer drive from Escondido to El Cajon was a familiar one. Around 8 p.m., she called her father to let him know she was on her way. But as the hours passed and the sky darkened, Kara never arrived. Her father called her boyfriend, who confirmed she had left hours ago. The family could wait no longer. They began their own search, splitting up to cover the two possible routes Kara could have taken. They called the police but were told they had to wait 24 hours to file a missing person report for an adult. The family was on their own. As morning broke, Kara's sister and her husband decided to check a quiet rural road that ran parallel to the main highway. In the distance, they saw a car parked near an old abandoned bridge. It was Kara's white Volkswagen. The car doors were open, the windows were down, and her handbag was still on the seat. The keys were in the ignition, as if she was about to leave, or had been interrupted in a great hurry. But of Kara, there was no sign. When police arrived, they began searching the area around the bridge. Below, in a dense, brush-filled canyon, they made a devastating discovery. They found the body of Kara Knott. She had been thrown from the bridge above. The family's desperate night-long search had ended in the most tragic way imaginable. The investigation began immediately, but the crime scene offered few clues. There were no signs of a struggle, no fingerprints, and no DNA that could point to a suspect. The only piece of physical evidence was a set of tire tracks on the bridge that didn't match Kara's Volkswagen. Another vehicle had been there. The first person police looked at was Kara's boyfriend, Wayne, the last person known to have seen her. But he had a solid alibi, confirmed by his sister. He had been at home until he learned Kara was missing, at which point he joined the search. Next, suspicion turned to Wayne's father, who owned the health food store where Kara worked. His behavior at her funeral was seen as overly emotional, and he had a reputation for flirting with young women. A witness even reported seeing a car similar to his near the crime scene. However, phone records proved he was over an hour away at the time of the murder, clearing him as a suspect. With no other leads, the case stalled. Investigators turned to the public for help. The story of Kara's death was covered extensively in the news. A few days after Kara's death, as part of the road safety campaign, a news crew from a local station filmed a ride-along segment with an officer to give safety tips to the public. The officer they chose was Craig Pyre. The footage shows Pyre in his patrol car, driving his route and speaking to the reporter. In an incredibly eerie twist, he offers advice to lone drivers. In the clip, Pyre says, "Anything could happen. Being a female, you could be raped, robbed, all the way where you could be killed." Viewers who had been following the case closely noticed something else. On Pyre's face, there were several fresh, deep scratches. When asked about them, Pyre claimed he had slipped on spilled gasoline at the station and fallen into a barbed wire fence. The explanation seemed flimsy and highly improbable. His colleagues later stated that it was unlikely, as the fence was far from the pump and the wire was stretched high above his head. The scratches had appeared on the exact day Kara Knott was killed. This footage turned the tide of the investigation. The police received nearly 300 calls. Dozens of women called to report unsettling encounters with the same California Highway Patrol officer. The officer, Craig Pyre, had pulled them over on the very same stretch of highway where Kara's body was found. The women's stories were eerily similar. Pyre would stop them, almost always when they were driving alone, and engage them in long, personal conversations that often turned uncomfortably intimate. He would sometimes talk for over an hour, even suggesting they pull off the main highway onto the deserted road, leading to the abandoned bridge, the exact location where Kara was found. Some women reported that he would touch their hair or shoulders, his actions far exceeding the bounds of a routine traffic stop. This pattern of behavior was a major red flag. On the surface, Craig Pyre was the picture of a model officer. A 38-year-old Vietnam veteran, he had been with the Highway Patrol for 13 years and was highly respected by his colleagues. He was married with 2 children. Now, detectives had a primary suspect, and the evidence against him began to mount. They examined Pyre's duty log for the night of the murder. One entry, for a stop at 9:30 p.m., around the time of the murder, had been erased and rewritten. The original entry had been for 10:30 p.m. It appeared Pyre had falsified the log to create an alibi. The driver he claimed to have ticketed at 9:30 confirmed that the stop had actually occurred an hour later. An examination of Pyre's patrol car revealed that its tires were a perfect match for the tracks left on the bridge. In the trunk, hidden under the spare tire, they found a rope. Forensic analysis concluded that this rope was consistent with the marks found on Kara's neck. The evidence was now directly linking Pyre and his vehicle to the crime scene. Though DNA analysis was limited at the time, forensic science still provided the final links. Tiny gold-colored fabric fibers found on Kara's clothing were a perfect match for the material of the patches on Pyre's uniform. Conversely, microscopic purple fibers from the pants Kara was wearing were found on his boots. A tiny drop of blood on Kara's boot was tested. It was O negative, a rare blood type. Kara's blood type was different. Craig Pyre's was O negative. Detectives theorized she had scratched his face during the struggle, leaving the blood on her shoe. On January 17, 1987, Craig Pyre was arrested. He insisted he was innocent. His first trial ended with a hung jury, unable to reach a unanimous verdict. But at the second trial, the prosecution presented the overwhelming circumstantial evidence. Nearly 30 women testified about Pyre's disturbing behavior. His colleagues admitted they had not actually seen him fall into the fence, but were just repeating his story. This time, the jury found him guilty. Craig Pyre was sentenced to life in prison. Years later, in 2004, with the advancement of DNA technology, Pyre was offered a chance to definitively prove his innocence. A test could compare his DNA to the blood found on Kara's boot. He refused without explanation. Kara Knott's family successfully campaigned for new laws, established university scholarships in Kara's name, and created a nature reserve on the land near where she died. Her father, who fought tirelessly for justice, passed away in 2000 while visiting the reserve dedicated to his daughter's memory. Through their efforts, a story of senseless tragedy became a legacy of positive change, ensuring that Kara Knott would be remembered not just for how she died, but for the light she brought to the world. Kara's story shows us how evil hides behind authority, but the next tape strips that away, placing us in a home where authority doesn't exist and help will never come. It's called Slumber Party Alien Abduction. Our third piece of footage comes from an undated home video recovered from a family home. The tape is part of a segment from the horror anthology film V/H/S/2, presented as authentic found footage. The central gimmick of this recording is its primary cameraman, the family dog, a small terrier named Tank, who has a mini camera strapped to his back. This unique perspective is what makes the footage so disorienting, and ultimately so terrifying. We see two young brothers, Gary and Randy, goofing around in their backyard. The world, as seen from Tank's low-to-the-ground viewpoint, is running legs and laughing faces. The boys' parents announce they're leaving for the night, placing their oldest child, a teenage girl named Jen, in charge. Jen's boyfriend Zach arrives. He's portrayed as a stereotypical jock, and the footage captures him and Jen in a teenage makeout session. Soon the brothers' friends, Sean and Danny, show up, and the younger boys decide to ambush Jen, Zach, and their friends by the family's lakeside dock. The camera, still strapped to Tank, follows them as they prepare their weapons, water guns and balloons filled with a disgusting yellow liquid. They launch their attack, and the scene erupts into a chaotic water fight, filled with shrieks and laughter. It's during this moment of absolute mayhem that the footage captures the first anomaly. As Zach jumps into the lake, the camera pans across the water. For no more than a dozen frames, a figure can be seen in the background. It's tall, unnaturally thin, and dark. Its head is bulbous, and its limbs are elongated, almost like a stick figure drawn from a nightmare. It's there for less than a second before it submerges, completely unnoticed by the screaming teenagers. If you blink, you'll miss it. It's the first sign that they are not alone. Later that night, the prank war continues. As Jen and Zach are alone in her bedroom, the boys burst in, blasting loud music and flashing a strobe light, ruining the moment. In retaliation, Jen and Zach decide to get their revenge. They find Tank, strap the camera back onto him, and send him into the boys' room to catch them off guard. Their goal is to film one of the friends, who is sitting alone in the dark, in a private and embarrassing moment. As Jen and Zach confront him, laughing, the entire atmosphere of the house changes in an instant. The video and audio distort violently, twisting into a screech of static. Through the bedroom window, a blindingly bright white light floods the room, erasing all shadows. Then, the power cuts out, plunging the house into near-total darkness. The only light comes from the window, backlighting three slender silhouettes standing just outside the sliding glass door. They are perfectly still, their forms impossibly tall and thin. Zach, attempting to be the brave protector, decides to investigate. He slides the glass door shut and locks it, a futile gesture against a threat that is clearly not bound by normal rules. As he peers outside, something pounces from the shadows with inhuman speed. A stick-thin arm, unnaturally long and gray, darts from the darkness and hooks around Zach's neck, pulling him into the void with a choked scream. He vanishes without a trace. Before anyone can even process what they just saw, the house is swarmed. The creatures, now revealed to be classic gray aliens, pour into the room. The camera, still on Tank's back, captures the pure chaos of the invasion. One by one, they snatch the screaming kids. Tank runs around the room, capturing fragmented images of the attack. A friend being lifted into the air, Jen being cornered, a spindly gray hand reaching for the lens. The next sequence is perhaps the most bizarre and horrifying part of the entire tape. The camera's perspective shifts, and we realize the children have been captured and wrapped tightly in what look like sleeping bags or thick blankets. They are then carried outside and, one by one, thrown into the dark waters of the lake. The camera, still attached to Tank, is submerged. The audio becomes a muffled, gurgling nightmare. It's a clear attempt to drown them all. Somehow, in the confusion, a few of them manage to escape. The footage shows Tank, Gary, Randy, and Jen pulling themselves out of the water and back onto the dock. They perform CPR on one of the boys, frantically trying to resuscitate him. As they do, the camera catches movement at the other end of the dock. One of the alien creatures emerges from the darkness, crawling towards them on all fours like an insect. Its movements are jerky and unnatural. Just as they manage to revive their friend, they see the creature and take off running into the deep woods behind their house. The camera, still strapped to the frantic dog, becomes an almost unwatchable record of their terror. The perspective is shaky, chaotic, and claustrophobic. The view is mostly tangled branches, pounding feet, and the dark, oppressive forest. They try to hide, but Tank's panicked barks give away their position. Suddenly, a familiar sound cuts through the woods. Police sirens. The kids run towards the lights, screaming for help. But it's a trap. As they get closer, the sirens cut out with an abrupt, unnatural silence. The lights vanish. Randy is suddenly snatched from the group, pulled screaming into the darkness. Tank tries to defend him, but the small dog is swatted away with incredible force, sent flying through the air. Gary and Jen are the only two left. They find refuge in an old, dilapidated barn. But the aliens are relentless. The sound of their strange, chittering language surrounds the barn. They begin to force their way in. As the creatures close in, Jen is grabbed. One of the aliens holds her down and sprays her with a thick, viscous fluid from its mouth before she is dragged away. Gary, with Tank in his arms, makes a last-ditch effort to escape by climbing a wooden ladder into the barn's hayloft. But it's too late. The wooden ceiling of the barn splinters and rips away, revealing the massive, dark underbelly of a spacecraft hovering silently above. A cone of light envelops Gary, and he begins to float upwards, lifted into the ship by an unseen force. In his panic and confusion, his grip loosens. He drops Tank. The final moments of the tape are from the dog's perspective. The camera records the dizzying, terrifying fall from the sky. The ground rushes up to meet the lens. There is a sickening thud, and the camera lands on its side in the grass. For a few agonizing seconds, the lens stays focused on the face of the dying animal. He looks directly into the camera, his breath shallow before his eyes go still. The footage cuts to black. The tape leaves us with so many unanswered questions. What was the aliens' motive? The coordinated attack, the drowning attempt, and the elaborate police trap suggest this was more than a simple abduction. It was a hunt. What was the substance they sprayed on Jen? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, why drop the dog? Was it a simple accident, or was it a final cruel message from the captors? The footage doesn't provide an answer. It is merely a grainy, silent record of a night of pure terror that ends in a terrible act of cruelty. The alien abduction tape ends with silence. No answers, no survivors. But sometimes silence speaks louder than screams. Our next tape begins with a news crew descending into a storm drain, chasing a rumor they should have ignored. The fourth tape we will be examining is Storm Drain. Unlike many pieces of found footage which are recovered by chance, this recording was part of a professional news report that spiraled into a catastrophic event. The footage was shot for Channel 6 News by a cameraman named Jeff, following his ambitious colleague, reporter Holly. The segment, hosted by Holly, is an investigation into a local legend that has been gaining traction, a creature the community has nicknamed the Ratman. The report is a collage of short interviews. We see footage of local teenagers who speak of the creature with fear and excitement. They describe sightings near the town's storm drain system, a shadowy figure seen at the edge of the tunnels. The report then cuts to an interview with a local minister. He speaks calmly and authoritatively, dismissing the sightings as a product of overactive imaginations. He urges the community to focus on faith rather than folklore. The final interview is with a man who appears to be a survivalist. He stands near one of the sewer entrances, armed, and speaks with intense conviction, insisting that something dangerous is living beneath their feet. Holly, the reporter, sees this as a quirky but insignificant story. However, the tape then cuts to raw, unedited footage from later that day. We are now seeing through the lens of Jeff's camera. He and Holly are discussing their next move. Holly informs Jeff that their station manager, intrigued by the minor buzz the story has created, has ordered them to go into the storm drains to get exclusive footage. Holly is visibly excited by the assignment, seeing it as a chance to elevate her career. Jeff is audibly hesitant, but he follows her lead. The clean, well-lit world of the news studio is replaced by a cramped, dark, and oppressive environment. The only light source is the one attached to Jeff's camera. As they go deeper, their initial light-hearted banter fades, replaced by a tense silence. Jeff's camera work becomes less steady, reflecting his growing anxiety. Their first significant discovery is a makeshift camp. In a small alcove, they find a dirty mattress and a pile of what appears to be children's toys, along with empty bottles of liquor. Holly theorizes that a community of homeless people may be living down here, and she frames it as an important story to be told. Pressing forward, Jeff's camera suddenly catches movement in the darkness ahead. He focuses the lens just in time to capture the image of a man, standing perfectly still, watching them. Before Holly can even call out to him, the man turns and silently retreats back into the blackness, vanishing completely. They are not alone, and they have been seen. Shaken but still determined, Holly leads them onward until they encounter another individual. This man is sitting against a tunnel wall covered in grime. Holly approaches him cautiously, asking him if he lives here and if he knows anything about the Ratman. The man looks up, his eyes wide with what appears to be genuine fear. He whispers, "He is real. He is down here." Then, he gives them a horrifying, unnatural smile as a dark, thick liquid begins to pour from his mouth. He doesn't seem to be in pain. He simply smiles as he bleeds. Jeff tells Holly they need to leave immediately. Panicked, they turn and begin to run back the way they came. In the distance, Holly's screams suddenly echo through the tunnels. Jeff hesitates for a moment, turns, and is immediately struck by someone or something from the side. When the footage resumes, the camera is on the floor, pointed upwards. Jeff, the cameraman, appears to be waking up. He is dragged into a sitting position by unseen hands. The camera is then picked up, and we see the scene from his perspective. They are in a much larger, cavernous area of the sewer system. A group of people, the inhabitants of this underground world, stand around them in a silent semicircle. Holly is also conscious, restrained a few feet away. Then, a figure steps forward to address them, and it is the minister from the news report. He tells Holly that she came seeking a story, and now she will become a part of their story. He speaks of a being he calls Ratman, a creature who offers them salvation in the darkness. Two members of the congregation drag Jeff forward, toward the mouth of a dark, narrow tunnel. The minister begins to chant in a language that is unrecognizable. In response, a sound emerges from the tunnel, a wet, chittering noise that is distinctly inhuman. From the darkness, a figure emerges. The footage struggles to capture a clear image in the low light, but what we can see is terrifying. It is a pale, emaciated creature, vaguely humanoid in shape but with distorted, rodent-like features. It moves with an unnatural, jerking motion. This is the entity they call Ratman. The minister approaches the creature, holding a container. Ratman bends over it and deposits a thick, black, acidic substance. The minister then turns to Jeff. As the minister anoints Jeff with the substance, the audio is filled with a terrible sizzling sound and Jeff's muffled screams. We see Holly's terrified face as the minister and his followers drag her before the creature. Ratman looms over her. Holly lets out one final piercing scream as the screen cuts to static. The final section of the tape is perhaps the most disturbing. The static clears, and we are no longer in the sewer. We are watching the live broadcast of Channel 6 News, seemingly from the following day. The studio is bright, clean, and professional, and sitting at the news desk, looking perfectly composed and unharmed, is Holly. She is calmly reading from the teleprompter. Her co-anchor, Bill, turns to her and asks if she's feeling all right, noting that she seems a bit under the weather. Holly smiles faintly and says she's never felt better. Then, her body convulses once, and she leans forward. She expels a massive torrent of the same viscous black substance from the sewer directly onto her co-anchor. The man screams in agony as the corrosive liquid covers him. Amidst the chaos of the news studio, Holly straightens her jacket, looks directly into the main camera, and with a serene, unwavering smile, she begins to read the news story as if nothing has happened. The recording ends, leaving us with the chilling implication that Holly did not escape the storm drain. She simply brought its horrors back up to the surface. Storm Drain feels like staged horror, an urban legend captured on VHS. But the next case is something much stranger. A man who played both hero and monster, filmed not by himself, but by the entire media world. On the morning of November 18th, 2011, a news crew in Sydney, Australia, interviewed a man standing near the smouldering remains of the Quakers Hill nursing home. The building had been ravaged by a deadly fire, and the man, a registered nurse named Roger Dean, presented himself as a hero.
I'm Roger, I'm one of the nurses, and there was a fire, and I just quickly did what I can, get everyone out, and the smoke is just overwhelming, but you know, we got a lot of people out, so that's the main thing.
At first glance, he was a caregiver, a man who had bravely faced chaos to save the elderly residents under his charge. But Roger Dean was not a hero. He was the man who lit the fires. By the time he gave that interview, he knew that his actions had caused the deaths of 11 people and seriously injured 8 others. What no one knew yet was that this act of mass murder was a desperate attempt to cover up a petty crime. The story of the fire begins with a drug addiction. Dean, a 35-year-old night manager at the home, had been stealing prescription painkillers. Security footage from the night before the fire showed him entering the locked treatment room 36 times during his shift, a clear breach of protocol. The next day, an audit revealed that 237 tablets of a powerful opiate-based painkiller were missing. The police were called to the nursing home that afternoon to investigate. Dean was questioned, but the officers were called away on a more urgent matter before they could finish. Dean knew he was caught. He was cornered, and as his shift began that night, he needed a distraction. He needed to destroy the evidence. What followed was a scene that first responders would later call a firefighter's worst nightmare. Just before 5 a.m., alarms blared through the nursing home. The fire started in a back ward and spread with terrifying speed. Thick black smoke filled the corridors, dropping all the way to the floor. The heat was so intense that the firefighters' thermal imaging cameras broke down, forcing them to crawl on their hands and knees into each room, unable to see. They had to search by hand, feeling along the walls and across the floors for residents who might be trapped, hidden, or unable to move. The fire was so hot it spread through the roof space, causing it to eventually collapse. In the chaos of the evacuation, workers tried to push beds out of a side exit, but a handrail jammed the first bed, blocking the path. Bedridden residents had to be carried one by one to the doorway and passed to emergency crews outside. By the time the blaze was contained, the home was destroyed, and a horrific human toll was just beginning to be counted. That same evening, police arrested Roger Dean. At the station, the fake hero disappeared, and the killer began to talk. The video of his confession provides a chilling and unforgettable glimpse into the mind of a man trying to explain the inexplicable. Seated across from a detective, Dean is shockingly calm as he admits to lighting the blaze. He tells the officers that he found a colleague's cigarette lighter.
I took the lighter for the purpose of lighting. I didn't expect to light a bed, I just wanted to light something. I just wanted to set a light to something.
His words are almost childish in their simplicity, as if he were talking about a minor act of mischief, not an inferno that claimed 11 lives. He tells them he went into an empty room in one of the building's wings. He describes setting fire to a sheet and watching the flames take hold, admitting he was scared when he saw how quickly it spread. But that wasn't the end of it.
Did you light any other fires in the Quakers Hill nursing home last night?
He explains that he went to another room and lit a second fire. Two of the women in that room, Dorothy Wu and Dorothy Sterling, were immobile. They were completely dependent on the care of their nurse, Roger Dean. Both women died in the fire. As the interview continues, Dean's story becomes more and more bizarre. He seems to be searching for a reason for his actions, something to deflect the blame away from himself. He claims he was under attack from evil forces.
I mean, you won't believe it, but it was like Satan saying to me that it's the right thing to do.
He explains that he started carrying a Bible to work and wearing a crucifix because he was afraid of the nightmares he was having. Yet his claims of being controlled by evil are completely contradicted by his calculated actions. During the fire, while firefighters were risking their lives, Dean snuck back into the building. He wasn't trying to save anyone. He went back to the treatment room to retrieve the drug register books, the very evidence that would prove his theft. After leaving the scene and giving his heroic interview to the news, he went home, tore the records up, and threw them in a bin at another address. These are not the actions of a man overwhelmed by evil. They are the actions of a criminal covering his tracks. He saw himself as two different people, the good nurse who loved his patients, and the victim of evil thoughts who was forced to kill them. When his case went to court, Dean initially pleaded not guilty to murder, hoping for a lesser charge of manslaughter. But on the morning his trial was set to begin, he changed his plea to guilty on all 11 counts. His defense team argued that his decision-making was impaired by a personality disorder and his drug addiction. But the judge, Justice Megan Latham, disagreed. She stated that Dean's actions were planned and that his moral responsibility was not lessened by his condition. He was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. An inquest later revealed a disturbing history that should have prevented Roger Dean from ever working as a nurse. He had been suspended from a previous hospital job for suspected drug use, where colleagues noted he was slurring his speech and appeared sedated. At another hospital, he stalked a female employee who had raised concerns about his work, eventually damaging her car. When he applied for the job at Quakers Hill, his resume was mostly out of date. He listed his most recent employment as a cheesecake shop. The nursing home never checked his work references. The system failed. A man with a clear history of drug abuse, deception, and menacing behavior was given the keys to a medication room and entrusted with the lives of the most vulnerable. Ellie Valkay, the daughter of 90-year-old victim Neeltje Valkay, learned that the total value of the drugs Dean had stolen was only around $89.
What I heard yesterday too, that it was only $89 worth of drugs he had on him at the time. I'd give him $89 so long as he gives my mother back. Right? I'd give him $89,000 to get my mother back, which will never happen, just for that lousy bit of drugs.
Roger Dean blames Satan. He blames evil thoughts. He blames everything but himself. The most terrifying monsters aren't the ones that look evil, but the ones that wear a disguise we are taught to trust, the ones who wear a nurse's uniform and tell the world they are a hero. Dean's story shows how one man's mask can fool an entire city, but what happens when the mask isn't a disguise, but a lesson? The next tape isn't a news story or a found footage film, it's a how-to guide for something unspeakable.
It's much better. If you want to, afterwards you can set it down, put a black candle on the top and let it bleed down. Let the candle wax fall and it looks nice. Okay, so what you do, if you want, you can try diluted bleach on it, okay? You dip it in there for a few seconds, all right? So wash it off, all right? Then afterwards you dip it back in, wash it off.
There are videos on the internet that are so strange, so unsettling, that they become modern urban legends. This is the story of one such video. It's a grainy home recording, about a half-hour long, that has puzzled internet detectives for decades. The title it was eventually given online is Grave Robbing for Morons. The clip features an unidentified young man who explains in unnerving detail how to rob graves, exhume bodies, and sell them on the black market for profit. Throughout his tutorial, he casually holds a human skull, which he claims was recently dug up. The video is deeply unsettling, not just because of its subject matter, but because of the young man's demeanor.
If you want, you can look for something underground. Underground, you should bring at least six people with you. Bring around.
On one hand, he offers sensible criminal advice, like using fake names. On the other, he makes the wild claim that you can't leave any witnesses, suggesting you should knock them out so they believe it was all a dream. Despite his claims of expertise, he admits at one point that this is only his second time doing this. Yet at the end of the video, he seems to throw all caution to the wind. He gives his first name as Anthony, and even names his accomplices. He claims they are part of a new trend, and announces their ambitious next target.
Anthony, well, as a matter of fact, let's forget the last name. It's Anthony and Gino, okay? This is made by us too. We worked hard. Also, Bucci and Daco also helped at the very beginning. Me and Gino first opened it up though. Alright, we opened it up. We broke it open, but the other guys helped out a lot.
The internet's fascination with this clip comes from a place of morbid curiosity. But to understand just how real this tape might be, we have to look at the surprisingly active and lucrative trade in human remains. What the young man in the video is describing is more accurately called body snatching, not grave robbing. The term grave robbing refers to stealing possessions buried with the dead, while body snatching is the theft of the body itself. And while it might sound like something out of the 1800s, the trade is still very much alive. Historically, the demand for human remains has always been far greater than the legal supply. In the 19th century, medical schools needed cadavers for anatomy studies, but there were few legal ways to get them, which led to the rise of professional body snatchers. Today, while people can donate their bodies to science, not everyone does. And not all donated bodies end up where they're supposed to. Instead, they can fall into an unregulated grey market, where for-profit brokers sell human remains to the highest bidder. Academic papers from as early as 2003 detailed the sale of human remains on eBay, noting that a commercial market could encourage theft from graves and morgues. Eventually, sites like eBay and Etsy banned the sale of most human remains, But the trade just migrated to a new home: social media. On platforms like Facebook, private groups with tens of thousands of members act as marketplaces for human oddities. An investigation by Live Science in 2020 went undercover in these communities, finding users who openly admitted to grave robbing and advertised the sale of incredibly young specimens, which fetch a higher price. These groups operate with a strict rule against reporting content to Facebook, instead asking members to alert the group admins. Inside, you can find almost anything. There are posts selling human brain specimens, the lung of a smoker from the 1940s, hearts, hands, and even a placenta. One person was even selling what they claimed was an Egyptian antiquity. One estimate suggests this online community has around 300,000 users. This dark, murky world is the backdrop for the Grave Robbing for Morons video. We don't know where it came from, who is in it, or what happened to them. The internet has managed to piece together a few clues. The consensus is that the skull in the video appears to be real. We also know the tape was filmed sometime after 1987, because a VHS copy of Evil Dead 2 is visible in the background at one point. More recently, investigators found another clue. A magazine seen on a table is a 1989 edition of Cinemagic, an offshoot of the popular horror magazine Fangoria. This places the filming in 1989 or later. It's also generally agreed that the people in the video have an East Coast accent, which fits with the mention of robbing Houdini's grave in Queens, New York. Over the years, the most popular theory is that the man in the video is Anthony Casima, a real-life cemetery caretaker in New York, who was arrested in 1999 for stealing from graves. The first name, location, and hobby all line up. However, there's no evidence Casima had a stutter, and at the time the video was likely filmed, he would have been in his early 30s, looking much older than the young man on screen. Another theory pointed to Christopher Pochi, a horror film director, because his last name sounds similar to one of the names mentioned in the video. This theory gained traction when a website he owned began selling copies of the tape. However, it was later revealed that Pochi had nothing to do with its creation and only started selling it in 2016, years after it first appeared on YouTube. His name is also pronounced Bochi, not Pochi. The most likely truth is that the video's origins were lost, as it was passed through the underground world of bootleg tape trading in the 1990s. The main reason the tape became so popular online was its inclusion in a bootleg DVD compilation called Ensuring Your Place in Hell. This DVD was a collection of disturbing, unidentified videos. For a long time, the earliest known source for this compilation was a seller on a counterfeit goods website in 2009, but digging through old internet archives revealed it was being sold as early as 2007 on a website called Stumpy's. After tracking down the person who ran the site, they admitted to creating the compilation. They said the tapes were sourced from other traders in the pre-internet era, and the whole point of Ensuring Your Place in Hell was that they were tapes where nobody knew if they were real or fake. The trail seemed to go cold there until a Reddit user named C. Pager found an even earlier reference. A catalog from a website called Shocking Videos was selling the tape as a standalone. Item in 2003. This version was even stranger, as it was spliced together with a skate video, and the video quality was much worse, suggesting it came from a completely different copy of the original tape. But even this 2003 source listed the tape's origin as unknown. Today, Grave Robbing for Morons remains an unsolved mystery. We don't know who the people in it were or how their story got here. The modern world of body snatching, with its Facebook marketplaces and repurposed donated bodies, is in many ways far more disturbing than the urban legend captured on this one grainy VHS tape. By now, the line between myth, crime, and ritual has completely eroded. Some of these tapes were fictions, some were real crimes, and some we still can't place, which might be the most disturbing truth of all.